Episode 101, and Ryan Ozimek joins me on the podcast, and he talks about inbound marketing and how he does it for non-profit organizations in his company PicNet.
Latest Joomla news, design tips, marketing ideas, and interviews with experts in the industry.
Beginner or professional, this podcast is for Joomla enthusiasts.
Welcome to the Joomla Beat podcast with your host, Peter Buey.
Hey there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Joomla Beat podcast, the podcast all about designing, developing, managing, and marketing your Joomla website. I'm your host, Peter Buey, and this is the first episode after the 100th episode of the Joomla Beat podcast. I hope you all enjoyed that episode. It was quite a long one, and I probably won't be doing a long one like that ever again. It took a lot of time and effort in regards to organizing all the interviews, piecing everything together, doing the post-production, and of course there were still bugs and errors in the post-production itself. But yeah, you know, you're human, you make mistakes, I guess. But anyway, hopefully you all enjoyed that. I still haven't got around to doing all the show notes and other bits and pieces that go along with the show, but I promise to get them up as soon as possible, so you can follow all the links, find out more about all the people that I interviewed as well. All right. Now, this one I'll keep much shorter, and this podcast episode, Ryan joins me to talk about his company PicNet and how he has grown and specialized in helping non-profit organizations not perform a task, but reach their goals to enable them to do cool and important things for the community. So let's just get straight into this podcast episode and get into this interview.
Stay tuned as Peter brings his special guest to the table. The Joomla Beat Podcast.
So I have Ryan Ozimek joining me on the podcast for this episode. He leads up a company called PicNet over in the United States, and it's a very interesting company, and Ryan has an interesting story and a lot of experience as well. But Ryan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Could you tell the listeners a little bit about your business, what it does, the impact that it has, and what you mainly focus on in that business?
Absolutely. So the name of our business is PicNet. PicNet's been around since 2001, so it's been a long time now, and our focus ever since we've started has been to find ways to serve our nonprofit and public sector communities with affordable and effective technology. So we started off doing website design and website development. Our company has evolved over the years, and now we're very much focused on building tools that change makers can use to essentially do inbound marketing. Everything from event registrations, landing pages, forms, online donations. If it's a way in which you want to connect with your community and to bring that data into your organization, we build the tools for folks to be able to do that.
Okay. For the people that don't understand what inbound is, can you just give a brief description of what it is and how some of your nonprofits are actually taking advantage of inbound marketing?
Yeah, in the communications and in the marketing world, there's a couple of ways to think about how content or information travels. When you think about advertising, or if you think about email marketing, or if you're thinking about ways to get your word out there, a lot of that is thought about as outbound marketing. It's you pushing the message out to the web, to customers or prospects, etc. Inbound marketing has really come of age, I believe, during kind of the search engine world or the web world, where the buyers are not waiting to hear your advertisements and then are waiting for you to knock on the door to sell something to them. Our customers in the modern world are doing the research on their own. They're doing searching on their own. And what we want to be able to do as marketers is to help them find their way to making the best choices that they can make. And hopefully those best choices will lead to your products. And inbound marketing is essentially the practice of making it easy for you to connect with your customers that are out there doing the research. The customers are essentially coming, hopefully, to you. And our goal as marketers is to find ways to get them attracted to hearing the types of information and education that we provide so that they will hopefully choose our tools and products.
That's a really good explanation of it. Haven't heard a good... yeah, go on, Terry.
I was thinking about this for myself because over the last couple of years, I started to think, well, gosh, what makes it different in 2015? I really feel the difference is, how people are coming to us. We used to be in the age where the salesman knocked on your door with the vacuum cleaner, and there you were purchasing a vacuum cleaner all of a sudden. You didn't expect it. You weren't looking for it. But now we live in a world where it's an on-demand search. And the question is, how do you make the search as informative as possible so that these customers can find the right tools?
Yeah, user buying behavior has quite changed over the years. Like, people would always do research before they go into a physical store and purchase something. They'll find every last single article about a vacuum cleaner, get social recommendations about that vacuum cleaner as well, and by the time they go into the store to purchase one, they know exactly what they want, and the salesperson is just processing the transaction at the end.
Yeah, and what's I think is a great kind of new horizon in the inbound marketing world is, when this marketing meets big data. So let's not use the buzzword too broadly, but let's just say if you've engaged with a potential customer and you've provided them information about how the vacuum works, you've provided them white papers comparing your vacuums to other people's vacuums. When they come into the store, hopefully, if you've got great marketing, you've got this data now to understand what you've already told them, what their interests are, what are their buying habits when it comes to needing a vacuum, and then being able to point them in the direction of what you think, based on all those criteria, what could be the best of your products for them. So I think bringing them into the store is, 80% of the way there. Now, as marketers in the modern age, it's now really making sure they connect with the exact right product at the exact right time. And we've now got the technology, I think, to be able to do that.
All right. So in terms of the technology and collecting this data from your customers or the users, how are nonprofits doing it? I know you use a couple of systems. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, the nonprofit world is slightly different and quite similar to what you see in the for-profit world. A lot of organizations are looking to do fundraising to raise money through online donations, to be able to get people to come to their events. And these are, not too different from what we're seeing in the for-profit or the business world. Right now, a lot of organizations are looking at things, I would think, in a very ad hoc or one-off manner. There tends to, unfortunately, be decision-making by crisis. So suddenly you need to be able to do an email blast, and now you're rushing to find the right email tool to send off a message. You send off the email message and you said, okay, where are we driving people? Okay, you got to update your website, make that look good. Now that we've updated the website, wait a second, what's the tool that we need to make sure that when they come to the website, we're converting them from the passerby to the actual donor, somebody who's actually converted into somebody giving you money. Along that way, unfortunately, I think right now we're seeing organizations play catch up to the technology. So I think what the world probably doesn't need right now is a lot more technology. We need simplified technology that gets organizations able to be able to get their heads wrapped around what's happening, because there's so many touch points from we're telling the world what we're doing all the way back to the other side of somebody actually giving you money.
So in regards to what you're doing for organizations, how are you making that technology simpler? When I do a quick Google now for CRMs or sales mechanism tools, there are so many out there. How are you making this easier for the nonprofits?
Yeah, so in the nonprofit space, there's a couple of leading tools that we've really focused on. So we've come from a tradition of using tools like Civi CRM in the nonprofit world, and these days been doing a lot of work with Salesforce, which is actually provided for free to qualifying nonprofits, which is extremely powerful. And what we're trying to do is to say, you know what? When you're looking at where the data is being stored, there's fantastic offerings for you, from open source projects like Civi CRM to big proprietary solutions that do wonderful things like Salesforce. That's great. Those aren't going anywhere anytime soon. What I think is innovating, though, is the way in which we're bridging the connection between the person that is getting ready online to make that donation and your database, and how do we facilitate that process? That's where I believe a more creative aspect comes into it. That's where we're thinking about ways to move people up what we like to call ladders of engagement. So thinking about somebody first coming to your website as a passerby, moving them up an engagement ladder to actually converting them into evangelists. And the way you can do that is going to be pretty different for different organizations. And we here at PicNet are building tools like Soapbox Engage to help organizations find that path down different ladders of engagement. So ways to make donation pages accessible to people that have made one click from, say, a Facebook post that you may have made while waiting in a shopping line to giving you $10 for a donation, or checking in people for an event that they may have registered for. So we're looking to facilitate and bridge the gap between the folks that want to engage with your organization and the database where you're collecting all their information.
All right. So you're alluding to a lot of stuff here, and I have to pick your brains a little bit more. I know the listeners are going, wow, all right, this is amazing stuff, but what is it all? One thing that you just mentioned then was ladders of engagement. So this is when a user comes in at a point and you're putting them at a particular position. So this is like an initial engagement of some sort.
Right.
Can you explain a little bit more about the term there, ladders of engagement, and how that actually works for an organization?
Yeah, we'll use this from the nonprofit perspective that I know a lot of, but really it can apply to any organization or business. What we like to do to start off with is try to understand who are the key audience members that we're looking for. So we like to call those online personas, where really you can think, Bob Smith is, a 40-year-old manager of a computer company, and he participates in with our organization by giving us X dollars a year and maybe coming to our gala, our big dinner event once a year. You go ahead, and once you've defined these different types of people, these different personas, the goal is to find paths for them to be able to start off as, casually being interested in what your company or your organization does, to maybe the next step, which could be, the next rung on the ladder of engagement for a particular person might be to sign up for your newsletter. Maybe the next step up the ladder of engagement is for this person to attend a free event, like a happy hour that you've got. And maybe the next step after that is they actually become a donor and give you money. And then maybe after that, they've given money, they've signed up for your newsletter, they know everything about your organization. Maybe they're now soliciting donations from other people on your behalf because they love your organization so much. And then finally, maybe they are the wild supporter, the fantastic evangelist that's telling the rest of the world how great your organization or company is. So everything from just the passerby, the person that has barely heard of your organization, moving them from that position through a life cycle up to being an evangelist, we like to consider that the ladder of engagement. And there's going to be different ways for these different personas that you're going to want to move people from point A to point evangelist.
That's pretty cool, and a really good pictorial way to describe how it all works. Now, something else that might make it a little bit clearer for people is, how do you move a person from one point to the next? Are there special ways, are there special techniques that you apply to take a person from being a newsletter subscriber to a donor?
Yeah, so this is where the online personas really are critical. A retired person versus a young person fresh out of college probably aren't going to be going down or up the same ladder of engagement. They're probably looking at engaging with your organization in different ways. And so very early on, we'll want to think, well, what are those different personas and how do we want to connect with each one of them? The individual steps that you take somebody up on the ladders of engagement really depend on which persona you're going after. So if you're looking at the young millennial and you want to get them involved in your organization, well, the first step on that ladder is probably not asking them to write a $5,000 check. The first step is probably having them maybe click a share this button on Facebook for their organization. Building those different conversion points to move them up different steps really depends on that persona. And the strategy for getting there is going to really be dependent on the way in which those people want to be interacted with and just the types of things that your organization is doing. If you're an organization that's, say, I don't know, maybe it's an environmental group and you want to put on pressures for your government to change the way it looks at government policy around the environment, encouraging folks to spread the word and to be champions of your mission, to encourage folks to be able to come online and to send a letter to their representative in government. Those might be some of the ways you move people up those ladders of engagement. And one of the things we like to do for another podcast is to be thinking about how you score that. Like, how do you know when somebody has reached, leveled up as high as possible? And there's lots of cool strategies to think about for that too.
Wow. This is gold. Right? So basically, when you're thinking about this whole inbound marketing and lead generation process, you have to think about your customers and break them down to the different personas and then create all the different ladders behind that and then look at how each one of those personas progress up. And I guess the end point of those ladders be completely different for different personas as well. Yeah,
that's right. And I think one other thing to think about is when you start thinking personas first, you think customer first, and you say, what is the pain point? What is the problem that somebody's coming to your business? Nobody's coming to your business just because they want to give you money. Like, they have a problem, they have a need, and your business hopefully can fulfill that. So looking at it from their perspective and then working it backwards is so much better than saying, I have widget A, I'm going to force widget A down your throat until you buy it. That is just not the way people are going to connect with you in the modern world.
Now, something else that you mentioned just before as well was Soapbox Engage. That perked my interest. Can you explain to the listeners a little bit about what that actually is?
Yeah, so we have come from a web design and web development background, and we realized maybe over the course of the last 6 years or so that a challenge for a lot of the organizations that we were working with was to say, well, gosh, maybe I already have a website. And what we really want to be able to do is not rebrand ourselves or not write a whole lot of new content. What we really want to be able to do is touch people as effectively as possible at key conversion points. So a conversion point you can think of as somebody signing up for your newsletter. The difference between somebody viewing your sign up page and actually signing up is very big. We want to be able to find ways to make it as easy as possible for people to be able to get effective conversions. So we set off to essentially build a suite of apps, which we call Soapbox Engage, which is really a set of 6 apps that organizations can choose all or one and be able to do everything from fundraising, event registration, form and data collection, online e-commerce, and even advocacy all in one place, so that through one set of apps, an organization can see exactly how they're touching different people within their community. And most importantly, do exactly what we were saying before, move people from bystanders to evangelists by moving them up ladders of engagements using tools like this.
If an organization was looking for this, where would they find Soapbox Engage?
Yeah, if you go to soapboxengage.com, we've got everything from...
Obviously.
Yeah, exactly. We've got everything from our demos to trial accounts and everything listed there. Soapboxengage.com.
All right, excellent. This is some really good content here. Now, for the listeners that are listening in and may be completely overwhelmed, like where to start and how to do all this that you're talking about, what tips can you give our listeners to start that process in terms of inbound marketing, the ladders of engagement, etc.?
Yeah, I would say this. In an app world, where you and I on our phones can download a piece of technology as quickly as we can press our screens, I urge everybody to resist the technology. You know, the technology is not the silver bullet, the panacea. It won't solve the problem. So my early tips for people that are just getting started in this stuff, unfortunately, doesn't require you to use our apps or to download something on your phone. It requires you to take a step back and think about your customers, their problems, their pain points, and how you're going to move them through these ladders of engagement. So the very first thing we always recommend people do is make those online personas. And it's super simple. We recommend maybe 4 or 5 fictitious people. Have fun with it. Make them funny names and give them really strange careers, whatever you need to do to get people on your team interested in it. And from that, say why each one of those personas cares about either your organization or your business and what you're potentially going to be able to do for them. And start there. Be customer centric. And then let's work to the technology as the final choice and a long list of things that you can do to get good at inbound marketing.
Absolutely fantastic. I'm assuming there's a lot of blog posts or articles about this on your website as well. Can people get access to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to soapboxengage.com, we have some information that helps organizations think about some of these examples. So oftentimes if you get kind of frozen and aren't thinking, well, what are some ways in which we could do this because we're a unique organization? We've got a ton of examples listed there on our website just to kind of pique your interest, to get you thinking about the different things you could be doing to help move you forward in the right direction, and lots of tips and blog posts on it as well too.
Absolutely fantastic. And if people were wanting to follow you on social media, how can they do that?
Yeah, on Twitter, I'm at Ozimek, so that's COZIMEK, so Ozimek on Twitter, and I spend most of my time posting there as well as on LinkedIn, and it's Ryan Ozimek.
Fantastic. Ryan, thank you for sharing all your pearls of wisdom on this podcast episode. I'm sure a lot of people will get a huge amount out of this.
It's been a pleasure.
Joomla experts, high-end users, creators, and, well, really, anyone you should be listening to.
This is Joomla Beat Podcast with your host, Peter Buey.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for joining me on the podcast again and sharing all of your wealth and knowledge in regards to inbound marketing and all the methods that you've put together for your clients and what you've been doing there. Sharing is caring, and you shared quite a lot there. It's awesome. So thank you very much, Ryan. Now, in other news, before we close this episode off, if you hadn't heard, there is quite a critical update in regards to Joomla. Now, if you're using Joomla 3 at the moment and you haven't updated to the latest version, which is version 3.4.5, your website could be vulnerable to SQL injections, which basically means that a hacker can get into your site just by browsing the front end of your site online. So this is a really, really important update, and you have to make sure that your websites are updated as soon as possible. If you're using a tool like RS Firewall or admin tools, I've been told that they should block this SQL injection, but if you're not, and you haven't updated, you're leaving yourself open to vulnerability and this attack actually happening to your website. So please make sure you update your site as soon as possible. I read a blog post on the Security website, which is a company that does a lot of security monitoring and unhacking of websites. And they did a scan and a watch of this vulnerability in the wild after it was announced, and they saw up to 12 million unique attacks happening using this particular vulnerability against Joomla sites within the next few days after the vulnerability was announced. So your website could be one of them. So please make sure you update your Joomla website as soon as possible and get it to the latest version 3.4.5. Okay. Now, in saying that, if you enjoyed this podcast episode and you want to support it, please jump onto the iTunes store, give it a big thumbs up, a 5-star rating and review, and that will really help with the discoverability of the podcast episode or the podcast in general. And or maybe you can just share it out to all your friends, tell everyone in your network, anyone else that you know that likes and loves using and building Joomla websites. Tell them about the podcast. You can learn so much. If you're not on iTunes, jump on the Spreaker network. Give us a big love heart there. That really helps as well. Okay. Now, until next time, everyone, please make sure you keep your website safe and secure. Make sure you back it up and make sure you keep it updated. All right. Bye, guys.
You've been listening to the Joomla Beat podcast, bringing together the community of designers, developers, fans, and users from around the globe.